Every part of the race is important, but many sailors consider the start as one of the most crucial moments, and with the normal waterborne start, getting it exactly right can make or break a racer. If you get it wrong and cross the line too early, then you're instantly disqualified, but if you're a fraction too late, then you're history. With 8 people in a heat, all counting down to the start through a 4-minute sequence, there's a lot of pressure to keep edging forward towards the line so as not to miss out. As Bjorn Dunkabeck and Robbie Nash explain.
The key to success to win the heat is the start and the first leg is like 50% of the race. So you have to have very good timing with your watch if it's a boat start. If it's a beach start, you have to be fast on the running start on the beach. And not be any mistakes, because with your one mistake in the slalom heat, it's quickly over. It's only like 4 or 5 minutes, and you fall in once, it's over, you're out.
Well, depending on the conditions, the start can be 80% of the race. The less wind there is, the flatter the water, the longer the legs and the less jibes, the more important the start and that first run to the first buoy is, to the point of sometimes having no chance of catching up if you do blow it. The more wind there is and the rougher the water and the more jibes there are, the less important that first buoy is. I mean, you can have a bad start and you still have the possibility of catching up later on, because people will be falling, or boat speed differences are a lot more extreme when the conditions are rough. But in flat water, and in fact overall, you've really got to just get your timing on, which means paying attention to your watch, timing the flags correctly, and putting yourself in a position not based off of just where the right place to be is, but where the other competitors are. Because there are 7 other guys that are trying probably to be in very much the same spot as you are. And so getting the timing right, being in the best possible position, but in relation to the other guys, is what you're trying to do.
After the start, it's the very first jibe that can now make a winner, as all 8 racers converge at top speed into the same small stretch of water, all trying to cut the tightest and smoothest turn around the buoy while staying at top end speed. Just one mistake or a collision can be the end of a race, as Anders Bringdahl and Robbie Nash know only too well.
Once you make it from the start to the first buoy first, and can do a jibe in full speed without having to stop, you won the race. Unless you do something really stupid afterwards, you know? And that's basically how important it is, right?
First jibe's a place where you can at least catch up if you're behind coming into it. It's quite critical. That's one spot where I often make up for not really having the boat speed sometimes in the flat water coming into it.
But the man they've chased for the past 5 years is Bjorn Dunkabeck from Spain, who's taken the slalom world title each year since 1988. The battle for the slalom world crown has been intense, but Dunkabeck seems invincible. What is it that keeps him ahead of the pack?
Experience, many years of practice, enjoy it. I mean, I've been living in the Canary Islands for a very long time, and the wind is quite strong there, so it's very good conditions for practicing slalom. When I was young and small, I always had to sail against my father. He was big like I am right now. So to keep up with him, I had to work hard all the time. And that really helped me in the beginning to go fast on slalom board. Also the conditions down there are very different. It can be light winds, it can be strong winds. So I kind of got into all kinds of conditions at an early age already. So when I started racing World Cup, I had quite a few racing experience already from local races. And that really helped me to put me through the first years of racing in the World Cup.
These days, skill alone isn't enough to win races. The top level of the sport demands for the leading edge in technology, with every aspect of the equipment made from state-of-the-art materials for lightness and strength. It's a high-tech battle to stay at the top, and every piece of equipment has to be the best, right down to the fins, as Robbie Nash and Robbie Seeger explain.
Well, the fins have become an increasingly more important part of the whole slalom combination. What we're using these days is very strong, very stiff material, the majority of which is G10, an epoxy glass combination. Outlines are very high aspect, using fairly low lift foils, using the fin just basically for stability rather than for lift. In course racing, we'd use a little bit thicker foils, higher percentages, because we're trying to get upwind. It requires a bit more lift. Slalom fins, it's more stability and just trying to make them as slippery as possible, still maintaining control. This would be an example of a range of fins, all with the exact same outline, just getting progressively smaller. Say a 32 cm, 30 cm, 28 cm. That's a fairly standard range with a fairly standard outline. Go into something like this, a little more raked, a little more elliptical outline, and then going down into a very common style these days, which is a wing fin, even more high aspect, a little bit better high-end stability, not quite as much lift. Going on into extremely high-wind rough water fins, where you see the tips are much more steeply raked. They're a bit more flexible, making for quite a bit better control in very rough water situations. That would slow you down in flat water. Flat water fins are much stiffer. If you look at this, for example, there's not a whole lot of flex in the tip. This is an IW90 fin. It's a material that's come up in about the last year, which is an even stiffer material than the G10. Good for some applications, not good for others because it's simply too stiff. But all in all, the fins are an extremely important aspect that most of the sailors are putting a lot of effort in, either through purchasing fins or, like myself, both purchasing and designing my own fins.
For any sailor who sails just for fun, pleasure sailors, is if you have a fin which is too stiff, you have a spin out, you'll really have a hard time to catch the board back and get back on track. So if you have the right kind of flex, the fin with any heavy changes, it's like the fin will adjust to it, and your sailing is going to get a lot more comfortable. And so what happens, you'll go faster, you'll jibe better, you have less spin out, everything.
The design of the sails is continuously evolving, and like all the gear, they've changed immensely in the past few years, with mylar becoming a major part of each sail. So what are the sail designers striving for in their new ideas, and what's coming for the future?
Well, we're always trying to make them lighter, of course. The lighter a sail is, the easier it is to use. Again, relates back to easiness. So they're always trying to be lighter and ease of function as well. Some of the lightness might come from some of the films before the sails were laminated between the plastic and then the cloth to hold the plastic together. But now we just have thicker films of plastic, so there's no cloth. So when the sail gets wet, it doesn't absorb any water. It's a solid plastic sheet, almost like a piece of glass. So that's dramatically helped the weight. The battens as well. Now we used to have solid fiberglass battens. Now we have hollow ones, tube battens, which are stiffer and make the sail more stable and more predictable when you're sailing. But they're also a lot lighter, which makes the sail easier to pull up and again easier to use.
And the slalom sail is a sail which is easy to tack. It has to be quick jibing because slalom is not just speed, it is also a matter of handling. In a jibe you have to be able to jibe around the mark really quick and tack the sail very quick. And while you're tacking, it has to, rotate pretty quick and pretty easy.
Slalom sails in year 2000 are going to look a lot more refined than what we have right now. I can see a little bit bigger left pockets coming into play, new materials, all trying to follow suit with the hang gliders a little bit, trying to get the foil more perfect, and even though it is twisting and moving, still always have it 100% tension everywhere with airtight materials.
To the uninitiated, the slalom boards being used these days are unchanged, all alike and all performing the same. But the differences amongst the experts can be huge, even though it might just be a millimetre here or there. So what does a top racer look for in a board?
Well, the major thing that we're looking at is the speed of a slalom board. You want to be going fast, so generally you don't want to be doing as much turning, so there isn't as much curve in the board. The boards are a little longer and a little thicker than wave boards because you need to drive around buoys, and as you slow down you don't want to sink down, you want to stay on top of the water so you can accelerate quickly out of the jibe again.
Everything's done by feel when you're designing a board. You go out, you make something and you go out and try it, and where it's tapping on the water it needs to be changed, or if it's hitting you up or pushing you down or sucking, it's not slippery. It's all these things. You go out, it's all done by feel.
Well, the latest development in slalom and course sports is that the nose is getting more narrowed all the time. The rock is getting a bit flatter. So that means you have more control at high speeds. It's maybe a little bit more difficult to get planing, but it's always windy enough to just take the right board size and it's no problem. and we go lots faster than last year. I think a couple of knots faster, easy, like 3-4 knots, maybe even more. I wouldn't have a chance with my boards I had last year this time to win a race anymore.
The future of board design, I mean, I'll tell you in 5 years where we are. I mean, if I would know right now, I would probably build it. So, I mean, I think board design follows the development of the rig pretty much. And the fin, I mean, it's like just the link in between, and we can't really do much about it. I mean, about it without taking into account those two other elements, which finally make the whole thing. And we're looking for a balanced unit, and the board is just one part of it. So we can't go on in one direction and just, wow, do something totally outrageous and the other components don't follow. So it's going to be a steady development, small steps at a time, probably.
Unfortunately, the Meltemi winds have completely deserted Paros this week, so it's the opportunity to explore the island by motorbike and become tourists for a while. And some racers go further afield and take in the sights of Athens itself, leaving the island early to enjoy the cultural and touristic sites of one of the oldest capitals in the world.
Good evening, welcome to Dunkabeck. Can I help you?
Yes, I need a room number 2.
Would you please register for me?
Yes.
We need your name, address.
Okay.
Well, I tell you, my impressions this time are quite a bit different than they were in 1979, the last time I was here. And a lot better than they were then. It's hot. That's the most profound thing. It's very hot. Other than that, it's a beautiful city. It's extremely busy and a lot bigger than I had thought. But there's some neat history. It's a neat place. Definitely a good stop on the way out, and a huge contrast from what you see out in the little islands. It's amazing what the population is like here and so on, what it has to offer compared to, a couple of hours out on places like Paros.
It's a place especially for European people. It's a place where it's really easy to go, cheap, and you have only 2 hours, 3 hours flight, so it's really close to the Europe, to the business town. And for tourists, it's really easy to find all the convenience that you can need, like cheap hotel, cheap rent-a-car, bike, It's built for the tourists, but it's still sauvage. That's what I like the most in Greece.
So the Princeps Grand Prix, presented by Peter Stuyvesant Travel in Paros, finishes without a race sailed, proving to be a major disappointment for everyone involved. But now the racers pack their gear for the long journey home, with their thoughts fixed firmly on the few remaining events of the Tour still to come, and the focus on the World Tour Finals itself. But first, there are Grand Prix level events in the cold North Sea at Zilt in Germany, at La Torche in France, and the finals at Hokiba Beach in Maui.